Wednesday, halfway through the week. I have some announcements to make. I have a great lineup tonight as far as guests go, but I want to get these announcements out of the way first. First of all, if you're listening and not one of the folks in chat, please go to WANeWakeNews.com, click on that second tab, and that'll take you into the chat room. And I want to thank all of our monitors in there, keeping it clean and keeping it family friendly. And tonight would be, especially first hour, it'd be a good night to be in there because we're gonna pick the mind of our first guest about weather modification and what's happening in our country, what's happening around the planet, and who's profiting from it. If you have questions on weather modifications, if you have questions on what we're looking like as far as food and production in this country, we've been kind of hitting this just about every night this week, talking about the shortages that we see across the nation that are being announced and then kind of buried behind a bunch of pop culture nonsense in the mainstream media. But if you have questions on weather modification, what that's all about, Rosalind Peterson is going to be joining us here in just a minute, and she would absolutely be the one you'd want to post them questions to. I'll be monitoring the chat during the program. So get into the chat room, WANeWakeNews.com, and we'll be able to take your questions there. If you want to call in, I keep going to make this announcement. We are taking calls. 877-342-6673 is our call-in number. If you want to call in and ask a question, please feel free to do so. Hour number 2, I have scheduled right now. I have Reginald, also known as Demcad. He's going to join me in the second hour. And as of right now, that is the schedule. I haven't been able to confirm this up with Reginald, but I'm more than sure that he'll be ready to go. If not, Rosalind might hang around with us for a little bit in the second hour as well. But the big announcement I want to make is, a couple of them. We're trying all the time, to expand the reach of this program. I've been working with several folks outside of Wide Awake News to try to do some more collaborative efforts to get the message out. Starting this Thursday, tomorrow, I'll be shooting a weekly video for the folks over at the Intel Hub. Now, this will be a YouTube video, commentary video on weekly events. It'll be posted there as well as WideAwakeNews.com and whoever else wants to pick it up and run with it. And Alex, of course, he's had folks from the Intel Hub come over here and be guests. We're going to try to work together more in the coming months in order to consolidate the message and spread the message of alternative media, and mainly because we both believe that time is running short, and it's hard to say that sometimes, especially when this normalcy bias takes over and we pretend that everything's normal because we have this normal political silly season going on. But the folks that are in alternative media, the folks I talk to anyway, we are all, we're all feeling this same, I don't know if I want to call it this buzz in the air, or we're feeling this same tension building as we get closer and closer to the election, as we get closer and closer to the historical time for markets to go haywire, as we get closer and closer to the crisis of reality being revealed. We think it's more important now than ever to consolidate our message and try to get that out. The other big announcement I want to make is Karen Quinn Tostado, who is every Friday night she comes on and hosts for 2 hours, sometimes with her husband Al, sometimes not, only when I can cajole him to get on the air. Karen is taking on a bigger role at WideAwakeNews.com. She's going to continue to do the same 2-hour block she does on Friday, and bring on the excellent guests she always does. But she's going to also start doing a lot of the scheduling work for the entire weekly lineup. Now, I can't express how important this is. This 2 hours a night, I love doing it. I know the folks that tune in every night love having it. We've had a lot of people, in the first year, the rally cry was a 2-hour program. And there's obviously a lot more work that comes with that. You're expanding your guests. You're doing more after-hours work to try to answer emails and that kind of thing. And for her to step up and volunteer to take on the role of helping me with this schedule is a massive, massive load off of my shoulders, which frees me up to do more things, more commentary videos. It frees me up to do more collaborative efforts. It also frees me up to fire a bunch of names off to Karen of people that I would like to get on as guests, where she can have the time to go down and track these guys down. Now, we're going to have a link and an email address for you, the listeners, to send guest suggestions. We will have it set up by tomorrow, and I'll bring that email address onto the air and give it out, and we'll also post it in the chat room. I get through the website, I probably get, 15, 20 emails a day. A lot of them are people wanting me to get this guest or that guest, and it gets lost in the shuffle. So now we're going to have somebody who's going to be looking at these, going to be working hard for the program to get the guests that you guys want to hear. But not only that, be able to tap into the network of people that Karen knows, which is, it's unbelievable, the vast number of people that Karen seems to know in one way or another, or has been on their program, or they've been on her program. She's just very dedicated. She's very dedicated to Wide Awake News Radio. She's very dedicated to Wide Awake News. We're very lucky to have her, and I'm internally grateful for her efforts coming on here, doing the 2-hour show on Friday, but then stepping up to handle a bunch of scheduling. So you'll be seeing a more updated schedule to the left of the chat room. Karen will be running that, and you're going to see a wider variety of guests thanks to my friend Karen Quinn Tostado. All right, with about 3 minutes to go before the break, I'm going to bring our guest on tonight. The topics are weather modification, as I said in the opening video. I don't have to tell anybody, right, what we've been going through weather-wise in the last couple years, right? Since I've been paying attention to it anyway, we've seen record drought, we've seen record floods in some part of the country, record heat in the north, record cold in the south, and if you think it's all by accident, well, our next guest is going to square us away, I believe, on that. Rosalind Peterson, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate Karen for getting you on the program tonight. I want to give out your website real quick here. I'll put the link into the chat room. Architectural Defense Coalition, that is your website, correct?
AgricultureDefenseCoalition.org, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Did I say architectural?
Yes.
Okay, well, you can tell I've been in the building industry for 2 decades, so I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of architects. So there it is. I see A and R at the beginning of a word, and it's automatically architect. Agricultural Defense Coalition. Rosalind Peterson, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege to be here with you tonight as your guest.
That's an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you as my guest. So take that. All right, let's get into it a little bit. You sent us a bunch of information. Before we get into the first break, weather modification. Why don't you give us a brief history of weather modification in this country?
Well, weather modification actually dates back to World War I, proceeds through World War II, and there had been attempts on and off to modify the weather. But in the United States after the 1940s and 50s, there became a concerted effort to conduct hurricane modification, cloud seeding, and other experiments from time to time. Some of them didn't go so well at those times. But then all of a sudden in the Vietnam War, the United States Air Force and the United States military perfected weather modification. They kept the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Operation Popeye. They kept it flooded almost all the time for months on end, modifying the weather over the areas of Cambodia and other areas. And what happened was that the military on a large scale began to perfect weather modifications. So after the end of the Vietnam War, the technology had advanced quite a bit. But also there was what they called an NMOD, United Nations Treaty, which was ratified and passed by the United States, not to allow weather modification at times of war because of the devastation and secrecy that had happened during the Vietnam War.
Okay, Rosalind, sorry to cut you off. Hold on. I want to get a little more into that because it really does. There's a lot of people who consider weather modification as a conspiracy theory. and I want to get more into the history of it on the backside of our first break. Rosalind, Peterson, hang tight. We're going to be back with Rosalind and more Wide Awake News Radio, 3.5 minutes. The planet, but no wars, ... just weather modification. I explain that a little more because I don't know if that's a question or if that's a statement that we're not talking about wars tonight, and we certainly do talk about the ongoing spreading of Empire America almost nightly on the program. So, but absolutely, we can see the devastating weather that we've had across this globe over the last several years, destroying crops and destroying a lot of lives over the last couple of years. It seems almost that when you talk weather modification, you automatically go to a place where you're considered to be a tinfoil hat wearer. You know, when you talk about chemtrails, you talk about spraying, and it isn't the case. I mean, this has been a legitimate tactic militarily, as Rosalind said, since World War II. Rosalind, World War I.
Yeah, it was perfected during the Vietnam War for certain. At that time, and that's when a UN treaty, which was signed and ratified by the U.S. Congress, was put into place to stop weather modification for war purposes.
And we signed off on this treaty because what was the reason? Because it was too devastating?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And then after that, we've conducted, historically, we've conducted any number of programs since that time in the United States, in other words, cloud seeding, storm prevention, hurricane modification. All kinds of things have been going on especially in the 50s. And cloud seeding in the United States has been ongoing in the western states since the 1950s. Project Storm Fury, one of the ones was an attempt to weaken tropical cyclones by flying aircraft into storms and seeding the eye wall with silver iodide. The project was run by the United States government from 1962 to 1983. In 1958, there was a project using soot with inconclusive results. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology proposed using barges with upward-pointing jet engines to trigger smaller storms. There's been all kinds of things going on.
With storm, I'm going to jump back to Storm Flurry. It was run by the government. They were flying into hurricanes and seeding it with what? Iodine?
Silver iodide, which is a common product that's used for a lot of cloud seeding projects in the United States even today.
What was the purpose? I mean, what was the stated purpose? This isn't a secret, and it wasn't military use. It was to kill the storm or to have it drop its, lose some of its steam further out before it hit landfall?
Well, what they wanted to do was see if they could weaken it. And instead of weakening it, it actually changed direction. And then after that, it hit the United States. So there's all kinds of different programs that were initiated during various times that didn't work out very well, and some of them were canceled just because of disastrous results.
In your estimation and with your research, I mean, I'm looking at your website right now. Some of these experimental programs may cause a decline in agriculture crop production and so forth. There's a long history of experiments with the weather. There's a long history of using it as a military weapon. Is in your research and your studies, I mean, are we seeing the result of secret experiments that are happening with as far as our crop yields and over the last couple of years? I mean, you know, as we talked about last night, this time last year, we were 50% worse in the corn crop than we were this time last year, and the same kind of thing for the soybean crop. And these are devastating percentages that very soon are going to be affecting everybody. So, is this just natural phenomenon, or do you think there's an effort to modify the weather for one agenda or another?
Well, I'd like to quote something here. First of all, NOAA has a listing of 69 ongoing weather modification programs in the United States right now. most of them in the western states, which include California, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and Kansas. Now, the country of Mexico and Canada are also modifying the weather as well. These programs are state, they can be, cities have worked together to put these programs up. States, private corporations like Pacific Gas and Electric Company modifies the weather throughout California, and there's nearly 25 of those programs ongoing right now in California in various counties like Plumas County. And what happens is, according to research documents and also even the President's Office of the Science and Technology Policy back in 2005 wrote a letter saying this. He wrote it to Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, and it's on the weather modification section of my website. And he stated, local political and legal ramifications. Because small-scale weather modification, for an example, cloud seeding, may promote rain in one area to the detriment of another, modification could result in interstate litigation or private citizen litigation against the modification program. The legal and liability issues pertaining to weather modification and the potential adverse consequences on life, property, and water resource availability resulting from weather modification activities must be considered. And
when Peterson is our guest, we're talking weather modifications. And Rosalind, I apologize for rudely cutting you off like that. I wasn't paying attention to the clock, and I didn't hear the music announcing the break coming up. So I had to jump in the middle of what you were saying there.
That's okay.
I appreciate that. We were talking about states battling over weather modifications, how there could be litigation. And the point I was trying to get to is that there's no debate. I mean, weather modification isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. It's been going on for a long time. And with our half hour we have left, I do want to talk about what you see coming up in the near future. You sent some information about New Mexico. The information you sent and you wanted to talk about weather, betting on the weather, who's going to profit from weather modification, is extremely fascinating. And then I've written down a few questions from the audience in the chat room as well. But what's going on in New Mexico that we need to be aware of?
Well, in New Mexico, there is a proposal to conduct a atmospheric geoengineering program where sulfur is put into the atmosphere along with water vapor in order to test an idea that we can have solar radiation management. In other words, we can reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. The project, however, when you start reducing the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth through the use of particles like sulfur or aluminum oxide, there's several different types that could be used. What happens when you do that is it has the potential to change the climate because the sun and direct sunlight hitting the Earth, in other words, governs and hitting the Earth and the oceans, the land areas, has a big impact on climate. And there's a big fear that this project will change the climate in the United States as well as deplete beneficial atmospheric ozone. So there's some concerns about having this project in Mexico, considering that the public had killed the project in the UK earlier this year. And now a group of so-called scientists want to come and use the NASA facility at Fort Sumner in New Mexico to conduct this atmospheric experiment. We're concerned that it could change the climate for a long time to come because the particles, being so small, could stay in the atmosphere for up to 5 years. But when they do come down, you've got a problem of air, soil, water pollution, and you've got acid rain potentials wherever these particles of sulfur come back down again. So there's a potential here to have multiple problems from this experiment, and since there's no environmental impact statement, and there's no approval needed for this project from government agencies or the public. There's been no government hearings on this particular project. There's been very little public notification or even talking about this. So we're looking to see if we can't do something about this project until there's some public oversight and participation, and also fully looking into the detrimental effects that could occur from this. And there is some scientific evidence that it might be detrimental.
Well, is it going to be stopped then, or is it right now they don't need any kind of clearance, any kind of there's no kind of oversight or regulation behind this? So is it going to get stopped, or is it going to go forward?
Well, at the moment, unless a group of us can put a stop to it until we have more government hearings and oversight into this, it could go forward. Just as weather modification programs are allowed in the United States without public consent, government consent, right now, anybody with the money, in other words, if you have the funding, private corporation, private individual, state, county, city, the federal government, the military, and any private corporation or individual can conduct weather modification programs within the United States without public notification, public consent, public oversight. Absolutely nothing. Now, a few states like Texas have a regulatory board where it has to be brought before a regulatory board before it can be implemented, but these programs are ongoing in Texas as well as other states. And in California, it was a shock for KTVU Channel 2, Oakland, San Francisco. Their science advisor did not know until I brought it to their attention, and they did a program here in California a couple of years ago, broadcast on television, stating that there was up to 30 programs ongoing in just the state of California itself.
On weather modification. He had no clue.
Yes, and that's Pacific Gas and Electric Company, a public utility.
Rosalind, why do you think it's so predominant in the West? I'm in Montana. You're in California. We have a lot of listeners throughout the West. What is the reasoning behind it, do you think?
Well, they have mountain ranges, and they have not run it. There's no prohibition. So the programs can be put forward without public consent or notification. And I think that the experimental aspect of it, of snow enhancement, rain enhancement, in other words, all of this, they like to, they've even got a Desert Research Institute in Nevada that's conducting experiments too. And so we have, in other words, people who want to put snow on a ski resort can disrupt the water that would normally go, or snow that would normally go east, and water crops and croplands and ranchlands. So we have to look at what's happening, because these programs now make it so that there are the haves and the have-nots with the program.
Interesting. You know, and I mean, because I think back to maybe even pre-World War II, when cloud seeding, I believe it was actually during the Depression, cloud seeding was introduced, and because it was going through such a drought period in the breadbasket, and so military tacticians throughout history have salivated at the notion of being able to create weather and use it as a tactical advantage. I mean, if you can put a hurricane or even a monsoon rain over somebody, then, guess what? You're going to win. Now, there's questions coming into the chat. A lot of people saying, and we got about 2 minutes before the break here, that weather patterns change all the time. Is the question, and this is from one of our monitors in there actually, is the question is, are we seeing weather changes because of modification, or what is the cause of these crazy weather changes we've seen, especially in the last couple of years? What is your take on it? I mean, are we seeing too much meddling with the weather by man, or are we just going through cycles that are normal?
Well, there's 169 countries besides the United States doing weather modification programs. And a lot of U.S. weather modification companies are engaged in helping other countries and setting up weather modifications programs are conducting them in other countries. Countries like China and Russia have done weather modification for years. So as we add more and more and the growth of these programs grows exponentially, we're actually changing the climate. When you add to this that the military is conducting experiments and owning the weather by 2025, and Homeland Security is involved in hurricane control, you're starting to have a variety of government agencies that are also engaged in these type of programs. Lightning experiments by the U.S. Air Force at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. You're having Professor Emanuel from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology saying, well, you can take a fleet of airplanes and release carbon black on the West Coast, starting a warming front, moving across a weather front.
So when you look at it in totality, if you look at little bits and pieces that come in the mainstream, you can see why it can be considered a conspiracy. But when you look at it in totality, there's definitely a movement to gain control over the climate, and we're using global warming as potentially could be used as a motivator to do just that. Our host, Rosalind Peterson, is our guest. We're talking weather modification. Her website is not architectural, Agriculture Defense Coalition. I'll put that link into the chat room one more time. And our last segment, Rosalind, obviously an hour is not enough time to cover this entire topic, but I definitely do want to get to a few of these questions that came in from the chat. We've already talked about cycles. Is it cycles? Well, with the overwhelming evidence of planned and ongoing modifications, yes, there's cycles, but there's certainly man's hand in this as well. And as you point out on your website, under the weather modifications tab, that this is a handy excuse, or global warming is a handy excuse for meteorologists to use every time that we see some kind of change in weather. It'd be either increase in rain or increase in heat or increase in cold. In some cases, they want to blame global warming as the cause, but nobody wants to talk about the fact that we're modifying this weather. One of the questions that came in brings us to the Gulf Stream. There's a notion that somehow the Gulf Stream has been altered, and I believe the commenter even said the Gulf Stream has been halted, vastly changing our weather. Do you know anything on this? Has this come across your desk at all?
I've heard about it, but I would prefer not to comment because it's not an area where I've done much research on that issue, so I wouldn't be willing to comment on that. Okay.
Well, that was short and sweet. Energy weapons, such as HARP, or HARP to help maybe control weather. Any comment on that? Or is that something you stay away from?
Bernard Eastland had some patents that were sold to ARCO, and under those patents, he talks about weather modification as being a great possibility through the use of HARP. So I do know that it's possible with the patents that they have that they could do it.
Can you go into detail at all on that? I mean, I'm curious on how that would be used, the HARP program be used to modify the weather.
I'm going to let you know that I've got a HARP section on my website.
I'm on there right now.
On the weather modification section, I do talk about HARP and the patents are there. And I would have your listeners really go in and take a look at it because it's a little more detailed and complicated than for just a very few minutes of talking about.
Okay. Fair enough. So, again, go to Agriculture Defense Coalition. The tabs are all labeled there, or maybe we can get into that next time we have you on the program. All right. Okay. I definitely want to touch on this because it's amazing to me what can be turned into some form of derivative or another. Give us, they're betting on the weather, are they not, Rosalind?
Yes, through the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, anyone can bet on the weather. You can even take the NOAA listing I sent to you, and you could bet on the weather. You could bet on whether the snow was going to be enhanced at a certain area during certain months. You know the county and the state and the location and who's doing it. You could bet on snow enhancement, whatever is going on at a specific location, because the programs are listed. Weather modification companies can bet. Pacific Gas and Electric Company has weather modifications in several counties in California. They have to announce it publicly before they do it. They even tell you the months and the duration and whether they're enhancing snow or rain. And so you can go to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and legally bet on the weather. And if you're betting one area is going to get enhanced snow and rain, you can surely bet that the weather down the jet stream from that is going to have some sort of drought condition, or they're going to have drier conditions just because so much moisture is being taken out for these various programs that are occurring.
And this how is this not by our our esteemed representatives? How is this not seen? I mean, I know this is an opportunity. I mean, if anybody can go do this, you can bet on it and make some money betting on an outcome that these companies, a lot of these companies, are going to help see to fruition. But this is kind of sick, really, when you think about it. I mean, they're betting on the weather, and if they're taking all the moisture out of in the north in part A, and part B is going to suffer. I mean, this is once again we see make money at all costs, and we see this tendency to profiteer from the misery of others. I mean, it's amazing to me that this is even legal, let alone not talked about.
Well, it's only been in the last few years. You could bet on the weather, but only in the last few years could you bet on rain and snowfall totals. And that's because the technology has gotten so much better at, PG&E, for example, can say, well, in such and such a year, we're going to take 10% more snow for our weather modification and drop it into Plumas County rather than have it go over the Sierra Mountains. So, to Nevada, for example.
Right.
So we do know that the capabilities are much greater than most people and most companies want to admit, although many of these weather modification companies are in business because they're very good at what they do.
Right.
So it's not surprising that this betting on the weather has become a multi-billion-dollar industry over the last 8 years or so. I mean, worldwide, it's in the billions. And, of course, it really makes sense that if you know that in China for the Olympics several years ago, they modified the weather. See, that's a sure bet on something they're doing that's going to happen because they have told you in advance that they're going to do this. So in the Midwest and in the United States, our programs are consistent year by year by year. And the meteorologists don't talk about it because they have some sort of agreement that they don't want to talk about the weather modification programs to say that snowstorm that came in that dumped all the snow in one county or another was enhanced, and that the reason that the trees fall down and the roofs fall in and you have all these financial problems is because PG&E is modifying the weather. So they're in collusion in a way because if people knew, they would sue PG&E for damages.
Well, you would think the insurance companies would have a real interest in, what these weather modifications companies are doing, because as you just said, you have a massive storm come through. It was an area where they were trying to get increased snow, and all of a sudden, you have $1 billion worth of damages due to these storms, and you're having your homeowners insurance flip the bill from this. I live in a region that just recently, over the last 3 years, has seen the most severe hail in record, and it literally took in a region that has only a few million people living in it. It took thousands of roofs, thousands of homes had to have their roofs replaced. It was a boon for the roofing industry. It was a boon for a lot of the building industry because when the 2006 fantasy expansion of housing collapsed. They needed something in order to keep the building industry going a bit. In this region, we were lucky because we had, 10-fold, 30-fold sales in roofing material. And if the insurance companies, I mean, they have to know this, do they not? That this
they bet both sides of the market.
Okay, so
they bet that that something will happen, and they bet it won't happen. So no matter which way it goes, they haven't lost anything. They covered their losses, just like with agricultural crop insurance and other things. They bet both sides and cover their losses. And when they know that some weather program is going to be ongoing, then they can bet the weather so that there's not a problem for them. They're not going to lose any money. They're going to win big because they're betting on a sure thing.
Yeah. It's sick. I mean, it's sick. It's securitizing everything. It's bad enough, that we securitize our financial future into oblivion. It's bad enough that we get rid of representative government because of the damage of securitizing our financial future into oblivion. But now they're literally securitizing and turning into derivatives the very things that we need in order to sustain life. And it's not being talked about. It's just let go by the wayside. All right, with about a minute left, briefly, I guess as brief as you can, where do you see it going? Where do you see weather modification going? Is it going to be used as a control mechanism for humanity? It certainly could be.
Well, I think that the atmospheric and upper atmospheric programs that we're doing now, even jets leaving persistent contrails and man-made clouds, NASA admits, and Stanford University studies admit, change the climate. I mean, there's no doubt that the jets are having an impact on climate as well. So I think we're going to see escalating changes, and we're going to see the repercussions from those changes as we move down the line and these things proliferate. Absolutely. Well,
and like I said, if they could use it in Vietnam to inundate the Ho Chi Minh Trail, although it failed, I mean, it was successful in inundating the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but it didn't stop the supply of weaponry. It certainly could be used to tamp down. You could see it being used to tamp down civil unrest or to move vast numbers of individuals from one region to another, if that is so desired. All right, your website one more time: Agriculture Defense Coalition. I'm going to put that in the chat room right now. Rosalind Peterson, I thank you very much for coming on the program tonight. And again, I want to thank Karen for getting you on here. And I got to get you on again because I want to get a little bit deeper, if you can, in the near future with the HAARP situation, because that to me is fascinating.
I'd be delighted. So I'd be happy to be on your show again at sometime in the future. And thank you again for having me on your show today.
You're very welcome. Is there anything you wanted to announce, books, publications, articles, before we jump out and go to Demcad?
Well, Michael Murphy's new video is on the weather. Why in the world are they spraying? And it's very good. I think everyone should watch it.
Why in the world are they spraying? Rosalind Peterson, Agriculture Defense Coalition. Visit our website. I'll put the link in chat again. Guys, hang tight. We're going to do our long break for the program. When we come back, we're going to have Reginald, also known as Demcad, joining us for hour number 2. Stay tuned. W.A.N.Radio, I'm Charlie McGrath, your host, and I'm real happy to announce our next guest because it's always a good time. I was telling him off air that it's always great when he's on because it ends up being a fun time. We go down many different paths. If you have topics you want to talk about or call in about, 877-342-6673. We're both on Skype, so we're both monitoring the chat on Skype as well as inside the chat room. Reginald, also known as Demcad from YouTube, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me. Hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, man.
All right.
Loud and clear. All right. In your, I have some things written down that I wanted to talk about. I even sent you a few stories about a Texas judge warning of civil war if Obama's reelected. By the way, guys, I'm right now. Listen, I fully believe that Obama is going to be elected again for president. This hype about Paul Ryan, give it a week. It won't be hype anymore. This is a game. Everything we see going on, the 1 week the red team's out front, the next week the blue team will be out front. Again, I think Reginald would agree, it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. They're both going to carry out the same policy, and everything that we're seeing now is being performed for your entertainment only, because the true change that both of them are going to promise, neither one of them are going to deliver. But I think some of the rhetoric that is coming out right now, especially building up to the crescendo of the election by both sides. This headline, for example, where I just stated it, Texas judge warns of civil war if Obama is reelected president. I want to get into that in a little bit, but first off, you did a promotional video for the program tonight, and I love the question you posed, because you always do that in your videos, or sometimes you do, most of the time you do, pose a question to your audience, and it's gauge your hero potential, which I think is awesome. So Reginald and I are going to, and you guys can do it as well, listening, you can gauge your hero potential. Are you a hero, or are you going to run for cover? Now, you put the link in your video, so I pulled it up here, and I'll read these. The rules are simple. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask Reginald first, and then I'll write my score down as well. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to scale it 1 to 6 points. 1 is you strongly disagree, and 6 you strongly agree. So, Reginald, let's kick it off. I'm going to ask you this first question. Here we go. This is you to a T. I see this. You're going to score high on this one. I often have tender, concerned feeling for people less fortunate than me. 1 to 6, Reginald.
Maybe a 3. I don't think I'm going to score that high. Because I'm usually concerned about my own problems for the most part. I mean, less fortunate than me? I mean, I'm usually the people in the less fortunate category. But anyway, so I'll say maybe a 3 at most.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit there, but I'll write down 3.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what you do and why you do it, I think, is because you are concerned for people.
Oh yeah, but then they say less fortunate.
No, I mean,
they said people less fortunate than me. If you just said people in general, I'd probably have a higher score. But they said less fortunate.
All right, I have you down.
Most people are usually more fortunate than I am.
Well, but
in this country at least.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, let's get into it a little bit. You moved back to Michigan from Alaska, and I know you've had opportunities outside of Michigan, but you stay there because you care about your family. You care about what's going to happen to them, and you often do videos where you're walking through the streets, showing the economic condition that collapses actually here in some places. I put you at if somebody asked me this of Reginald, from what I know about you, I'd put you at a 5 at least. But if you say 3, I'm going to put 3.
Oh yeah, 3.
All right, here we go. Number 2. Fear does not keep me from pursuing my goals.
Normally I would say maybe 2, but given the fact I am on YouTube and I'm broadcasting myself,
right,
and it's probably putting me at risk for a number of things, I'll probably have to say maybe probably 3, because, yeah, 3.
Yeah, here's the deal. You're going to pick the middle numbers all the way down here.
No, I'm not, actually.
That's crazy, Reginald. You listen to me. Listen to this. You're on YouTube. You're putting out a video or 2 every single day. You put your face out there every single day. Your job right now is you're a security guard, and you're not afraid to tell your boss that, you know what, I'm not working the jobs where I can't carry. I don't think that fear is keeping you from anything that you want to do. But again, I'll put the middle of the road 3 down there, and we'll see how that goes. All right, number 3. I try to understand my friends better by imagining how things look from their perspective.
Probably 2.
I'm going to agree with you on that. I'm a 2 on that as well. I'm poor at that, and that's actually a quality that I think is admirable, to put yourself in someone else's position. Despite numerous setbacks, I usually succeed at getting what I want.
I'll definitely put a 3.
Okay. All right. Fear does not stop me from doing the right thing.
Yeah, I would have to say at least a 4 on that one.
4.
So I've definitely made some decisions that could definitely hurt in terms of being honest with people, but I probably shouldn't have been. I would have been able to get further by being dishonest.
Fear doesn't stop me from doing the right thing. I mean, you're on every night talking about, the right thing and what isn't being done that is the right thing. And to me, it isn't just to me. There's lots of people who would consider that pretty brave. I mean, there's people that won't call into the program because, they're afraid to be on the air for a minute and a half to give their opinion. There's tons of people that wouldn't sit in front. Most people wouldn't sit in front of a YouTube camera or or sit in front of a webcam and put out a YouTube video stating their point of view on the things that you state your point of view on.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. Aren't you concerned the police are going to come after you, or some government forces are going to target you, put you on a list or whatever? I'm thinking like, man, I mean, how are you really going to let fear completely take over your life? It's insane.
There you go. So you're not a 4, you're a 6. I just changed you to a 6. Because,
if you say so.
Well, let fear stop you from doing the right thing. You think it's the right thing to get the truth out there. You think it's the right thing to give your opinion on current events. Put that out there for everybody to look at. Millions and millions of people will have. And, the people who ask you, aren't you afraid of being targeted and being afraid, or aren't you afraid of being put on a list or something? That's a legitimate question. Because it isn't like that can't happen and or has happened. Because we know for a fact that it has. And we know for a fact that, coming out here doing this radio program or you doing your YouTube videos, absolutely you're in somebody's, you've been across somebody's desk. Who is this guy talking smack in Michigan? All right. I want to be a component. Competent. I want to be competent and believe I can.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a 6. I definitely feel strongly about that.
I believe you're competent, and I know you can be, so I'm going to agree with the 6. Being truthful is extremely important to me.
Yeah, usually, almost always.
So I'm going to go 6 there.
But 5.
5, okay.
Is that so good when you deal with the opposite sex?
That's a good point. You gotta put, being truthful.
That's so great.
All right, that's a good one. I'm going to take the same 5 score. So what do we got? That's 6 questions. Now, the rule is the higher your score, the more likely you are to be a hero. So if we have 6 questions, the maximum score is 36. The minimum score would be 6. Reginald is 3, which is 6. Did you already add it up?
There's 7 questions.
Oh, is there 7?
Oh, man. We're already at a break. It's 7 questions.
All right, then I'll tally. You're right. There's 7 questions. I'll tally up the scores. And we'll get into the chat room during the break and see what some of the scores were. We'll announce what Reginald's score was, and we'll announce what I believe my score was on the backside of this break. Hang tight. We'll be back with Reginald or Wide Awake News Radio, 3.5 minutes. There's no heroes on the air tonight.
Yeah, I know. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I mean, what is the scenario? What's the risk to you? I think that affects whether people get involved, who's in danger. Certain people will respond to certain types of people getting into trouble. Maybe if it's a child, more people will respond. Maybe certain people will respond more than others. Maybe if it's a woman, the risk you're going to take in getting involved. It could be even your mood, your mindset. It could affect whether you get involved or not. So I think it's very complicated, and I think unfortunately a lot of us are going to be put in a situation with this collapse where we're going to have to make a decision whether we should get involved or not. But
well, and yeah, I agree with that. But on the survey, look, I'm doing this as more of a joke than anything because, you're 100% right. You don't know who's going to be here. Look, the guys listening to us right now, the guys in the chat room who have turned off mainstream media and are looking for answers somewhere else, looking for answers within themselves. To me, that is a high expression of heroism. Because they're not following the crowd and they're deciding to think for themselves. So, I love little trinket surveys like this, but you're right. They're absolutely meaningless. You're not going to gauge somebody as a hero because they answered a survey from Yahoo. So, anyway, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the election. You did a video, one I was watching actually tonight, talking about predicting who was going to be president, and you were forthright in your video, which I appreciate, which is you were wrong about Obama, and you were wrong about, what was the other one?
I was wrong about Perry. Very wrong about Perry, Rick Perry.
Yeah.
But I was right about Brown, and I was right about Walker. So it's sort of a mixed bag, and I think I'm improving my method of analysis.
What is your method of analysis then?
And when it comes to elections, I look at who's making the deals behind the scenes with lobbyists. I look at who's focusing energy on certain industries. I look at the money. Where's the money actually going towards? I think it's very difficult. I don't know if the money is influencing who wins or whether the money is simply following the guy who everybody thinks is going to win. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know which variable comes first. I see there's a correlation between, money going in a certain direction to a certain candidate and the person winning, but I don't know if there's a causation and then what's the relationship between the causation. I don't know if the money going towards the candidate is causing the candidate to win or the candidate running a better campaign is causing the money to go towards the candidate. Maybe Romney's doing a better job of making deals with certain industries, and that's why more people in the industry are giving money to Romney. Maybe Romney's doing a better job of making those deals, and that's why he's getting more money. But I can tell you once again that Romney raised more money than Obama in the last 3 months. Okay, in July he raised $101.3 million in campaign money. $25 million more than Obama. The month before, he raised $35 million more than Obama. Obama's now spending more money than he's bringing in. Something's going to have to change for Obama to really win re-election. We know that he's liked personally among the American people, but his approval among handling the economy and other things are pretty much awful. So if things continue down this path, it's not going to be good for this incumbent. And if Romney or Obama wins, it's not going to be good for any of us.
Well, and that would lead to my next question. Does it even matter? I'm going to disagree with you on Obama. I think he will be the next president. I think we're going to see this trend of popular support definitely swing to the left, to the blue team, and then we'll see it swing back to the red team. I'm sold out on the notion that we're going to see some kind of event between now and then, either economic or military, and when that occurs, they'll rally the troops around the administration that brought down bin Laden, or the administration that rescued the auto industry and rescued the economy from going off the cliff in 2008, and this will be sold to the people of the country, and it'll give them the edge they need. You know what? We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, again, it brings me to the most important question, which we'll probably have to get into on the backside of this upcoming break, is does it even matter? Does it even matter if it's Romney or Obama? In your opinion, Reg, is there a coin flip difference between these two?
What's important, I think, for the powers that be is to get this election over with so they don't have to worry about the people going rogue and electing a non-corporatist warmonger, and then moving forward with their plans, whether it be to attack Iran. It looks like that's the direction in which this country is going. But I think there's going to be another push in the Middle East. There's going to be another war after the election. They may need a special event to get a lot more support.
Yeah, well, that special event is on the horizon, no doubt about it. All right, we're going to be back with Demcad, also known as Reginald. More Wide Awake News Radio, 3 minutes. Hang tight. News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host, Reginald Demcad from YouTube. If you haven't checked out his videos, then please do so. Go to YouTube, type in Demcad you probably just have to type in at this point D, and Demcad will probably be the first one that pops up there. Demcad on YouTube. Subscribe to him, follow him. He has. Are you on Twitter too, Demcad?
Yes, I am. I'm on Twitter. It's under Reginald Keigler, my real name.
All right. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on YouTube. A lot of good information coming out. I want to talk a little bit about collapse. I want to talk about the fact that over 50% of the country is now reliant on the government to some extent to put food on their table. But I want to talk about two stories that we just talked about off air. Talking about the condition of the country. See what happens when a nation's monetary policy is taken over by a bunch of private banks. You have this zero interest policy. You have this free flow of money to build bubbles. And we saw it with education. we're seeing it with education, rather. We saw it in the housing sector, blowing up the value of homes just to watch them fall further than they have during the Great Depression. Now we see it with government involvement with medical industry. I was telling Reginald I had to go in today for a CT scan. A lot of you know that I've been suffering with asthma-type symptoms for over a year now, and where I'm finally, besides doing homeopathic remedies, which I appreciate everybody's support in giving me great ideas, a lot of them, such as using the neti pot, which is a nasal rinse, has went a long way in helping reduce some of the symptoms and some of the pain that comes with these type of symptoms I've been having. But I'm finally seeing an awake doctor. Actually, it's great to announce, and a former veteran as well, a specialist in asthma and in allergies. And we've ruled out allergies. I have no allergies to anything under the sun. I've been tested for everything under the sun. So I had to go in today to make sure my nasal passages were all in line. I did some boxing early in my life, and I've had my nose broke a couple times, so it's very likely that I have nasal damage. However, that isn't that whole big long segment or speech there isn't to get any sympathy. This is where I want your sympathy now. I went in today to get a CT scan, CAT scan, of my nasal passage. It was a very, very fast procedure from pulling into the parking lot, walking in, filling out the paperwork, going in, getting the scan, getting back into my car and leaving was a grand total of about 10 minutes. I'm not exaggerating, 10 minutes. The actual scan itself took less than a minute. Go into the big metal tube, come out of the big metal tube. Thank you very much, Mr. McGrath. Have a nice day. Stop and get your bill on the way out. They handed me my bill, and to my surprise, Reginald almost nailed it. I almost hit the floor because I thought they gave me a bill for somebody having a gallbladder removed. It was nearly $1,000, $1,000 to go into that machine for a 40-second CAT scan. And Reginald and I were talking about this during the break, talking about how the ridiculous nature of our healthcare in this country. $1,000. This is what happens when you have government involvement in everything. It always makes it more expensive. It always ends up hurting the lower end of the economic social level. And who's got $1,000 to go in just to have their nasal cavity CT'd? Let alone if you have something serious going on. God forbid you go in and you have to go through cancer treatment or anything like that. This is why so many people give up the farm in order to maintain their health. Reginald, I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
Well, they can charge whatever the heck they want.
That's right.
That's why the cost is so high. They can charge whatever they want. Unfortunately, it may be headed towards a collapse like everything else.
Well, I certainly seeing bills and legislation being passed that force you to buy insurance from the same companies that help make this outrageous expense. This is where Ron Paul, I believe, had it dead on. I mean, he was dead on. Get government out of healthcare. If you're going to have legislation, you don't have legislation that's written by the big healthcare companies. You don't have the legislation that's written by the big insurance companies. You have, if you're going to write legislation, you have to write it. Excuse me. If you're going to write legislation that gets the government out of healthcare. That would be namely number one. Number two, write legislation that gets rid of the Federal Reserve, that makes it lucrative in order to make these bubbles, the healthcare bubble. Just one more, like you said, one more thing that is on the verge of tipping over. So seeing this Obamacare being passed, seeing this notion that somehow we're going to get better health care and it's going to be more affordable for the average person, forget about it. These bills, these outrageous bills will just be passed on to the taxpayers of this country. Reg?
Well, I mean, if I couldn't afford it in the first place, how is passing a law require me to buy it? Going to make it any better?
Well, just that doesn't stop that doesn't stop these companies from making the submitting the bill. instead of submitting the bill now, they're going to be, this bill will be submitted, but it'll be guaranteed and backstopped by government dollars, by our dollars anyway. So it's a scam. I mean, something is terribly, terribly wrong with the system when you have to give up everything in order to try to attain health or some kind of lifestyle that is just decent. If you want to just live a decent life, you run the risk if you have any ailment whatsoever. Like I said, this is a non-issue compared to serious issues, but people that lose everything in order to have health. I mean, when it comes to the decision of, do you want to burden your family with $1 million debt, or do you want to just kick the bucket? It's a legitimate reason. This is why I think we've seen cases in the last. You probably remember 6 months ago, a guy went in and robbed a bank. Then he just sat down because he had a heart condition and he couldn't get any kind of treatment because he didn't have the insurance or wouldn't cover it. So he went in, robbed a bank so he could get arrested and get plugged into the system and get taken care of. It's crazy.
That's what we come to. But
okay, we got.
That's. Oh, yeah, we have a caller. Okay.
And we have a question coming in from Black Wolf. What collapsed? I don't know if that was a question for you, Reg, or not, but we'll try to answer that on the backside of the break. We do have a caller, and let's go to Richard from Washington. Richard, we're probably going to cut you off because of the break, but just hang tight through the break, and we'll pick up on your question on the backside. Richard, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I was banished from rents, but Karen restored me, so I'll reward you. Do you want the solution to your problem?
Yes, I do, but wait a minute. You were banished from my chat
Radio for about 6 months.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't banish you.
There's been several of us, and Karen found out that was the case, so she did her thing. Karen worked her magic.
She's Karen Tostado?
Yes.
She's an awesome lady.
There you go.
Give me the solution.
So are you a vegetarian at all?
No, I am not.
No. Would you say you ate a lot of carbohydrates?
No, I don't. I don't eat a lot of carbs. I actually have a very good diet. But go ahead.
Well, no problem. I just want to know the background. Have you ever heard of standard processed products? The keys to nutrition and the geniuses of nutrition were back in the 50s. Royal Lee, a whole bunch of the people, Melvin Page, a whole bunch of the people back then, they were actually trying to enhance the human system. They especially dealt with the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and you may want to look into that. But standard process...
Richard, I want to hear this, but I don't want to cut you off with a hard break here. So hang tight a sec. We're going to be back with Richard from Washington, Reginald from Demcad, me with Wide Awake News Radio. Hang tight, 3 minutes. And you'll hear if I had success or if it flew up in my face. Richard, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Reginald, I know you wanted to touch on, we talked about during the break and a little bit early in the program, what will get, the outcome of the election. Let's leave it to the side for a minute. Well, let's not leave it to the side. I mean, we talked about a special event. Could there be a false flag? Could there be an economic implosion? Could it be military? What is the special event? The black swan, whatever you want to call it, that could affect this election. Now, we were talking at the break. You had an interesting theory on how these events usually shape policy and change the country immediately after these events. Go ahead on that a little bit.
Well, what I was talking about was the idea that it would make sense for them to switch up puppets, even though Obama and Romney have the same policies. Obama's already used up his political capital with Obamacare. He was used for left-wing cover to sign the Patriot Act, re-sign the Patriot Act, the same act that Bush put forth. It was also used to protect the Bush torturers. So what they do is they have a right-winger, a phony right-winger, implement some unconstitutional policies. They divide the population, 1/2 for it, 1/2 against it. Then they bring in another left-wing puppet, or a supposed left-wing puppet, and that puppet does the exact same thing. That's Obama doing the same thing with the deficit spending, same thing with supporting the unnecessary wars, same thing in supporting the Patriot Act. And he actually took it one step further and actually signed national defense authorization. And so then they had the other half of the population go along with it. So the first phase, they divided people in half, 1/2 for it, 1/2 against it. Then they had the other half accept it when they had the other puppet go ahead with it. So then that's how they make things in a weird way legitimize these changes that are really designed to really harm us as a people. But they use that tactic pretty commonly, and I think it makes more sense after they've used Obama for all his political capital to put in somebody else, because that's what they do. They use these politicians like tools, and once they serve the purpose, they find another one. Now, if they choose Romney as a tool, they have a situation that Obama had. Obama had both Democrats he had the Democrats controlling the House and the Senate, and he was able to push through Obamacare, something that normally wouldn't be able to get through. Well, this time around, I think they're going to use Republicans, and the Republican majority is probably going to be in the House and the Senate, and a Republican in the White House to push for a similar change. Probably not the same thing, but it's something similar in terms of magnitude. So if they want to continue with a big push in the Middle East, I think they knew that had they did it before the election, people would have been tired of it. They would have run the risk of people actually turning against them. People may have went rogue and decided to go with something other than their Republican or their Democrat. So they waited until after the election, put in another puppet. He has the goodwill that the last one had. He's able to implement a big change that favors the powers that be, and this sets them up for their next big war. Now, in order to get that, they're going to need some type of big event that will rally the American people around this cause. They're going to need more manpower. You can only have so many unmanned droids, unmanned aircraft used for these type of wars. They're going to need more manpower. It may be a Pearl Harbor type of event that'll encourage people to support a draft, but they're going to need some type of big event. And I just view Mitt Romney and Obama as tools. Now, which tool could be most effective for the next job? And the job isn't really to help the American people; it's to help the powers that be.
I think that's a very, very good synopsis of what we've seen happen. I guess the question is, do they need a different guy in there to get the things done to implement any kind of an agenda? I mean, obviously, when it comes to saving banks and bailing out banks, either one of them are going to do it. Obviously, when it comes to war or the continued expansion of empire, or you name it, either one of them are going to do that. I mean, I can see if there was some big chunk of agenda left to go, we could see a crisis arise, and maybe it'll be a food crisis, and we need to have some kind of crazy radical legislation that gives Monsanto even more control over everybody's life. I could see something like that coming down the road. But as far as taking over the economy, as far as implementing war across the planet, I just don't see that it matters which one's in there.
I'll tell you something. You want to know why I think corporate oligarchies are more effective for tyranny than dictatorships?
Okay. Yes.
It's because with a dictatorship, you have one personality constantly supposedly in charge, one personality that everybody can blame for their problems. Whereas with a corporate oligarchy, they can use puppets, politicians, to put forth, and people can blame that politician. Okay, instead of blaming the system, they can blame the personalities. Instead of blaming the system, they can blame a political party instead of blaming the system. Yeah. So you put forth one personality, one image, and once people get sick of that image, they replace that image with another image. So then you have people get angry at one image, but then you replace it with something else. People have an excuse to not get too angry or too excited or get too involved and focus in on the system itself. They start to focus on the personalities instead of the systems. That's why it's important to change out your actual figures, your actual images, your actual personalities. Replace the Bush with Obama. Obama's supposed to be hope and change, and you got young people, college students, and blacks, and everybody, and even a lot of middle class people clinging on to this image, to this nothingness. But I think it's a brand. It's a brand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then once that's done with, and it's been pretty much, that brand's been pretty much destroyed, it's time to put forth another brand. See, that's how you do it.
No, I agree with you. But I'm playing it forward here a little. As far as swaths of the economy, swaths of power, swaths of freedom that have been lost, I'm trying to see the next angle, the next pivot point that's coming our way, and what I see is the most important thing for the powers that be, since we talk about the powers that be, the folks controlling the show, controlling these puppet players, is to maintain this power, maintain this control, maintain crisis. This is how we've gotten to where we're at, is governing by crisis. And looking at headlines of everything from, we could see a pre-Israeli war with Iran, to looking at judges being worried about civil war, to looking at the fervor on the left and the right. The agenda seems to be pretty clear, at least to me it seems to be clear, that the most important strategy at this point is divide and conquer the country. Divide and get people into one camp or another, so the status quo can continue regardless of who's in the White House. And that's why I think we're going to see this very, very heated, visceral remainder of the campaign season that is meant to do one thing, and that is to divide us, so we can say, I think it's all the Mitt Romney's fault, or his ilk, or I think it's Barack Obama and the liberals' fault, their ilk, they're the reason for where we're at, but not have us pay attention to what's really going on and what's really being done in our name. I guess the question would be, do you see one piece of the puzzle that hasn't been achieved? The financial sector is handled, the military sector is handled, the corporatocracy is running the show. What else has to be done? What kind of other crisis could occur that would require, getting everybody on board, at least in Washington, D.C., to pass some other piece of legislation? All the pieces are there, are they not?
A lot of pieces are there. It depends on what they want to do.
Yeah.
It depends on what's the ultimate goal here. But, you can already see it's already starting to wear off. I mean, you can see a lot of people just aren't as engaged in this election as the last one. The people just aren't into it like they were before. And that would be something that would concern me if I was the powers that be. I think the turnout is going to be actually lower than last time.
Really?
I don't think people are going to be engaged. The excitement isn't there.
Well, I guess time's going to play this out. What are you hearing? I mean, you're in one of the most devastated parts of the country. I mean, what is it? Oh, Mitt Romney's going to save the day, or we got to give Obama 4 more years?
I don't talk to anybody about politics. I mean, I don't hear anybody talking about it.
All right, well, that backs up your theory of people just don't care. Maybe they're just fed up. They're fed up with it all. And who could blame them? Reginald, also known as Demcad, thank you very much for joining me for hour number 2. Guys, tomorrow night, it'll be myself, Eric Lovely for hour number 1, and hour number 2 to be announced. All right, guys, have a good night. Enjoy Jeff Rentz. He's coming up next. If you joined us late and you want to hear